Waiting for Willie coming back. Give us 2 seconds, please.
Always do.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
I'll sign that for you, mate.
Okay, just pass it around.
I think everybody's probably.
Okay, now this is quite a... Hello. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello. Thank you very much all for coming. It's a nice turnout tonight. Very pleased to see that. Just a couple of things. First of all, fire exit you can see is over there. If we're not expecting to have any fire alarms, but you never know. And if anybody's looking for toilets, it's down that way and around the corner, as it were. Right. My name is Temple Melville. I'm here to introduce people and hopefully help with the Q&A when it comes along. First of all, on my left is David Lowe, who is with me the co-owners of the IP for Scotcoin. Here is Willie Fleming, who is one of our tech team here. This is Brian, who is also one of our tech team. And Willie, the format this evening is David will give you a few words just on the situation and where we are. Willie will give you some information about our proof of concept and our minimum viable product, which is going forward quite nicely, thank you very much. And Brian will give us a short description about security and so on, which is becoming more and more important. So I think without any further ado, David, would you just like to say a few words, please?
Sure, yeah. So I'm going to speak very briefly because I think most value will be had tonight in the question and answer bit. So I'm just going to say that Temple and I, 2015 or so, I'm not quite sure, bought the IP and a whole bunch of Scotcoin, millions of it from Derek Nesbitt, who thought he'd bitten off more than he could chew. And at that point we just wondered what we were going to do with it. Very quickly it became apparent that we would have to get regulated because blockchain is here to stay. We believe cryptocurrencies are here to stay, and we believe they'll all end up regulated in the way that stocks and shares are regulated and bank accounts are regulated. So if you want to sort of invest, play, spend, buy, sell cryptocurrencies, you basically have to tell whoever's operating the ecosystem who you are, where you stay, and where you got your money from. So that was a big challenge. So the first thing we did was set up this Scotcoin project, which is a community interest company, i.e. an asset locked company, whereby on a dissolution of the company all the assets vest to specified charities. And the role of this is to educate, inform, market and promote Scotcoin. But on the counterparty blockchain we didn't really have that much to promote because we basically get caught up in all this wild speculation and euphoria and volatility and bad press, which basically made it very difficult to make the currency, if I can call it that, acceptable for goods and services. So the next strategic decision that we made was the controversial one at the time, to come off the existing counterparty blockchain and move on to our own private, fully permissioned, state-of-the-art, very fast transaction, cost-effective transaction blockchain. And we spent a lot of time trying to work out who we should speak to, who we should work with, and how we would achieve that. We had to do it, and indeed we are going to do it, because we don't really think there's any future for Scotcoin on the counterparty blockchain. There's too much speculation, too much volatility, too much intermediary currency risk, and that will never, these ingredients are just not acceptable for businesses that are interested in accepting the currency as an exchange for goods and services. The acceptance for goods and services is the only way a cryptocurrency will have longevity. Scotcoin has to be more than a simple store of value, and we have to make it acceptable for goods and services, and we believe by going on to our new blockchain, we will achieve that objective. So I've explained who I am, Temple alluded to it as well, what role we play in the ecosystem, what we're attempting to achieve, and why we're doing it. So I don't really propose to say much more of that at this juncture other than what I've just said.
Okay. Right. I think we'll just move on quite quickly because we want to get on to the Q&A, because that's where everything really happens. Willie, can you just give us a few words about the POC and where we are with the MVP?
Yeah. Okay, so a bit of acronym disambiguation to start. We talk about POC and MVP. POC is a proof of concept of our new blockchain. MVP is a minimum viable product, and that is everything, including the code, which is very important, but by no means the only part of it, that goes to make up the minimum viable product when we can effectively relaunch Scotcoin again. Right? Now, we inherited a situation where Scotcoin was based on the counterparty protocol, as David has mentioned there. The counterparty protocol was a good solution at the time. It was the only solution at the time to the problems that Mr. Nisbet had with the original Scotcoin. Once we took it over, we realised quite quickly that being tied to the counterparty protocol was, as David said, incompatible with our aims for Scotcoin, to make it a truly usable currency for Scots and to be traded throughout the world, because Scotcoin is from Scotland for the world. We have no intention of limiting it geographically. Sure, we'll use the Scotcoin brand name, we'll use the Scotland brand because it's what we're into. So it took a long time for us to get partners that we were happy could do the development for us. It took a long time for us to decide exactly what it was that we needed to move forward properly for it with an effective currency. And we're very happy that we eventually partnered with Cloudsoft in Edinburgh to provide further deep backup on the code to help us move forward with the development. And the first stage there was a proof of concept. So we went out, looked at all the various libraries that were out there, all the code that had been written beforehand. Who's done it before? Who has got code that is solid, that has been tested? Because what we did not want to do was just push out there and say, yeah, this is another software development program, and we don't quite know where it's going. So the decision was taken to use the libraries from Hyperledger. And this is a big open source project with the backing of IBM and the Linux Foundation, truly respected names within the software industry. And we knew if we were dealing with these partners, if we were dealing with proven code from that it would make the whole thing a lot simpler, a lot easier, and most importantly, an awful lot faster to market. So, starting back in November, we've launched the proof of concept campaign, and this was to provide a blockchain, permissioned blockchain, unlike Bitcoin at the moment, where anybody can sign up and get an account. With Scotcoin, you're going to have to be identifiable. In the terms of the finance industry at the moment, we use the phrase KYC AML, know your customer, anti-money laundering. Nothing will kill the idea of Scotcoin or any other cryptocurrency faster than being associated or being liable to be associated with the dark web, dodgy drug deals, etc., and all the lurid stories that are going around about Bitcoin. Now, these stories are vastly overrated, or overemphasized, but the fact is, we need to be regulated. We need to be regulated in an efficient manner, in a way that is quick, it's as unobtrusive to the user as possible. But because we can identify all of our users, it means that the consensus mechanism, the mechanism by which the transactions the transactions that have been done, they can be validated an awful lot faster, much more securely and quicker if we have identified players. Right? At the moment, Bitcoin and most of the cryptocurrencies you will heard of use a consensus mechanism known as proof of work. And this is very expensive, very energy intensive, takes a long time, and is not fantastically efficient. And this is why Bitcoin at the moment, you will not get a faster transaction throughput of more than about 7 or 8 transactions per second. That's global, that's worldwide. Visa has got the capability, it's never had to use it, it's the capability of doing 80,000 transactions a second. The most they've ever had to do is 28,000. And they normally idle around 16,000 transactions a second. So you can see there's a huge, huge difference between what Bitcoin can do and what is done out in the real world for a real world transaction processing. So we knew we had to change things, and we did a lot of research, we did a lot of reading, and we finally plumped on proof of elapsed time as our consensus mechanism. And this is very conveniently is the mechanism used by one of the Hyperledger projects, Sawtooth. So we use a lot of their libraries in that. So with the help of some very astute, very clever developers, some of who are sitting over in the corner there, say hi guys, they helped us put together a process where we could actually build a blockchain and build the components necessary to put that together in the proof of concept. And we did that between November and the beginning of the year. And that was concluded very successfully. We have got much faster than 8 seconds. Ah, here we go. We've got this up. They're saying 7 seconds per transaction. 7, 8. We can now do 50 transactions per second. The confirmation speed on Bitcoin is 12 minutes. We can do it in under 2 seconds. The cost per transaction, the problem with, it's not a problem, the feature with cryptocurrency is that the cost of confirming a transaction is the same whether you're sending $5 or $50,000. But on average, it's coming out about 3% for that, though it has been an awful lot higher. And when there is a big rush on Bitcoin and everybody and their dog wants to invest in it, disinvest from it, etc., it gets very clogged, very slow, and very, very expensive to transact. That's not good for us. It's no use for something that we want used as a day-to-day transaction. You're not going to go out and buy your messages if it's going to cost you £20 a time to actually do the transaction. Can't be done, just doesn't work. We can now get it down to 2 pence a transaction, and that's the kind of price that, let's face it, most ticket items can absorb that as a price of a transaction, as price of actually doing the transaction. We're aiming for 1 pence, we hope to get there. Right? In terms of the actual power usage for the energy that's needed to actually work the currency. Right now, Bitcoin uses more than the entire power requirements of Denmark, and it's growing all the time. That's simply because each time that Bitcoin does a block, thousands of computers are working incredibly hard, spinning lots of mathematical transactions to try and prove that it worked. And it works. It works fine. It just uses an awful lot of power. But we can do it for almost infinitesimal amounts. And one of the main reasons for that is we know who our players are. If we can identify something that goes wrong, we can immediately point the finger and make things an awful lot faster. So we did this, we got the proof of concept, and we've now got the basis on which we can actually build a minimum viable product. And the minimum viable product is, as I say, everything that is necessary to launch the coin fully as a usable currency. So that means that instead of, as well as the code itself to actually work it, we need wallet software, so you can run on your phone, you can run on your PC. We need a secondary market, an exchange, where you can transact the coin, where you can buy the coin easily, sell the coin if need be, for sterling, for dollars, for euros, for Bitcoin. We need to have all this together. We need an explorer, and we need to have all the marketing together to tell people about what we're doing. So there's quite a few aspects involved with the minimum viable product, and we're working on them just now. We hope soon to launch a testnet, and it will be a beta program for those who want to join in. And we very much hope that a lot of people here will join in with us in the beta program to help us test it thoroughly before we unleash it on our waiting public.
Okay, Willie, thank you very much. Just actually, one thing just occurred to me there. Does everybody here know about the blockchain? Is there anyone who doesn't know about blockchain? Got somebody there. Okay, a couple of people. Okay, Brian, could you just give us a little bit about the actual blockchain? You said you've got 5 minutes on the blockchain itself. That would be really helpful.
Right. I've put together a presentation how to keep your cryptocurrency safe. So the first bit is more about traditional currency and cryptocurrency. Obviously everybody knows about traditional currency, pound, US dollars and euros. And they're stored in wallets or your purse or a bank. Now cryptocurrency such as most famous one is Bitcoin that most people will know about, and obviously our own Scotcoin. Now what is a blockchain? Cryptocurrencies are stored in a blockchain, which is a series of blocks which form a chain. Blockchain, easy. And transactions between wallets are stored on these blocks on a public ledger. And if you see this diagram, it's quite a good diagram. Person A wants to send money to person B. So the transaction is represented online as a block. The block is broadcast to everybody on the network. Now, point 4, these are approved by people on the network called miners. What they do is they check that person A has got enough money to pay person B in the first place, because if not, the transaction can't take place. So once they've done that, then that block is added to the existing blockchain, so that all the public can see it. And then the money moves from A to B. So that's a really simple diagram. It's a lot more complicated than that, but I didn't want to go into too much detail and bore you with cryptography and stuff like that.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, basically speaking, as Brian has said, it's individual blocks of data, and those blocks are linked mathematically and so on. And that's what creates the blockchain, what means that it's certified as being correct and all the rest of it. So that we've done that now, I think the next thing we can do... Yeah, sorry, go back to the wall.
There's a little bit more explanation there. Each block, which is just a list of transactions, is we take a checksum of that. Do you know what a checksum is? It's a mathematical calculation. We can look at a whole load of figures. We can run that through what's called the hashing function. We take a hash or checksum of this list of information, just any information. And if we change even one bit of that information, then the hash that comes out of it becomes entirely different, right? Just if you change one tiny little bit, you get a very, very different number, right? So we can say that that is a digital signature of the block. And we do one block. There is a genesis block that kicks everything off, the first one, and that provides a signature. And here's the clever bit. In the second block, we attach the signature from the first block, right? So that if anything is changed in A, and the same again, for the third block, we attach the signature from the second block. But the second block already contains a little bit from the first block, right? Because we're using a hash and we're adding it at the end of each block, it basically confirms that everything up to this date is correct. And if we go back and change any little bit of that, it changes the whole thing. So it's very, very easy to see when there is any kind of discrepancy whatsoever. And that is what really chains everything together in the blockchain.
Okay, there we go.
We'll answer more questions on that later.
We'll have a Q&A after we finish. Brian, do you want to do the security now, please? That would be good.
Yep, okay. Right. Just like banks have an account name and a number, cryptocurrencies have addresses which correspond to the wallet. And that points to a location on the blockchain. The sample address looks something like this. You might have seen them before. It starts with 1XK and ends with YLVX. That's just an example of an address. Completely random address. Everybody's got one of them if you've got a Bitcoin account or a Scotcoin account. Now, you're probably wondering, what is a wallet? There's different types of wallets. Each wallet has a public key and a private key. Public is where you can receive the coins at. And the private address is a special key which you use to access your wallet. Okay. Now, the money or the coins is not actually stored in the wallet at all. It's just the public and private key that's stored in that wallet. Okay. Below is an example of a crypto wallet. Now, this one is counterparty one. Pardon me. Now, Scotcoin at the moment is on the counterparty protocol, so this is just an example of an online wallet. It shows that's got Bitcoin XCP. If it was a Scotcoin one, it would say Scot, and it would give you your balance there. Okay. Now, there's different types of wallets. There's a desktop wallet, which looks a bit like this. This is a Bitcoin one that you can download onto your computer. Now, the problem with that is, if your desktop computer or laptop gets hacked, well then it's very likely that the hacker can access that wallet and steal all your Bitcoin. So obviously it's not a good idea. Next we look at mobile wallets, and they're obviously installed on a smartphone or a tablet. This one is Free Wallet, which is one of the ones that we recommend people use if they're going to use it on a smartphone. There's another one, Indie Square, which is just as good. Lots of different options. Now you can secure it on a mobile. It's always good you've got a PIN number to access your mobile. So when you switch your mobile on, put in your PIN number, that sort of protects it. That puts like a layer of security on it. Now on the free wallet and the Indie Square wallet, you can also put another PIN number on it to access the app itself. So it's another layer of security, which I'd recommend everybody does. Not everybody does it, but as long as you've got a PIN number on the front of your phone. Now, online wallets, I've talked about this one already. You can access it simply using that address, wallet.counterwallet.io. Just go into Google Chrome or Firefox. When you sign up for a counterparty wallet, it gives you this 12-word passphrase, a completely random set of words, which is really important that you take a note of that and keep it in a very safe place. Because if you lose that, it's gone. That's your cryptocurrency gone. You can't get it back again. Okay? And there's the screen. You can either create a new wallet when you get that 12-word passphrase, or once you've set up your account, you put in the 12-word passphrase there and log into your wallet, and then you can see again. That's what you see. If you're a Scotcoin user, it would say Scott there. Also, there's a paper wallet. I've never used one of these myself, but it's probably the safest and cheapest ways because you just print it out. And it's got your Bitcoin address, that's your public address there. If somebody was going to send you some Bitcoin, you just quote that to them, or they can scan this QR code on their mobile. And this is a private key. And obviously that's very important, nobody sees that, or you can steal all your Bitcoin. So obviously you could keep that in the safe, somewhere really, really safe. So it's just another way of doing it. Hardware wallets is another way of doing it, and they're safe and convenient. Now, we've been trialling these. This one's called Trezor. It just plugs into your laptop or your PC, and you can transfer all of your cryptocurrency onto one of these. It stores the private and the public key on this device. And obviously, if you want to make it even more secure, stick it in a safe. But you can carry it around with you. Obviously, don't leave it on the train or anything like that. But it has a PIN code on it anyway. So if somebody did steal it, they'd have to know your PIN code or your password to get into it. Okay? So there's different types. This is the Trezor. I've been trialling the digital bit box, which is only about £50, which is not too bad, but it depends how rich you are. And what was I going to say? Yeah, Scotcoin and many other cryptocurrencies are not currently supported by these wallets, but we are testing them out so that when version 3 comes, I can't say, well, what we've got to do is we're testing these out, and obviously that's part of the testing process to see, obviously, if it works, well then we will announce on our website that these devices work with the new Scotcoin version 3 that's going to be released. Obviously that's part of the testing process. But there's no reason why we shouldn't. It works with Bitcoin, it works with Ethereum, and lots of other
ERC20
cryptocurrencies.
and
What was
other
that, Ollie,
ERC20
sorry?
other ERC20 tokens. it works
ERC20
with.
tokens, yeah. Okay.
The Scotcoin token that we will, when we're ready to finally launch it, will be similar to an ERC20 token, which some of you have maybe heard of. These are the tokens that were a major part of all the ICOs that made all the headlines towards the end of last year. We will use something very similar, but not exactly the same, and we are hopeful that we'll be able to use these hardware wallets with that. So, all in all, it'll be a major step forward in security if we can do that. One point Brian didn't emphasise there was when we talk about private key and we talk about the 12-word passphrase you have. The 12-word passphrase is really your private key encoded in a somewhat friendlier fashion. But what is really, really important is you do not share your private key or your 12 words with anybody else. It's like your credentials for your online banking. You do not share them with anybody else. You do not allow. You do not lose them. You do not share them with anybody. There are no password resets. If you lose your private key or you lose your 12 words, that's it. End of story. Cannot emphasise that enough. And that's why paper wallets, this sort of thing, very helpful.
Just on that particular point, I don't know if any of you were aware or you saw that quite recently Facebook was sending out, well, it wasn't Facebook themselves, but somebody on Facebook was sending out a scam email or text to people saying you can get so much Bitcoin and so many Scotcoin if you click here. And when you click there, they ask you for the 12-word password. Now, we do actually know of at least one person who did that. There may be more, but we do know there was one.
And it looked exactly like that when you clicked on the link.
It was precisely what it was there.
It scraped the website.
It was a thing. We put out a thing immediately saying, you know, don't do this and all the rest of it. But we do know one person who did. So be very, very careful online. Okay.
A tiny wee bit more to do, Temple, and then that's me. Right. Security tips for you. Now, some people that are already techie will then be telling you stuff you already know, but here goes. Never give out the password or the 12-word passphrase to anybody, which Willie's already said. Make sure all the devices you use, like a desktop PC, laptop, smartphone or tablet, has all the latest antivirus updates and operating system patches. Okay. Ensure all the devices have a password or a PIN code as a bare minimum to access your device. Because some people have got to switch your phone on, go straight onto your desktop. Always have a PIN code. Use two-factor authentication if possible, which you can use Google Authenticator or, as I said, a PIN code, or use biometrics such as a fingerprint or facial recognition, which some smartphones have got nowadays. You can just, it takes a picture of your face and you can unlock it with your face or your fingerprint. Okay. Many thanks for listening to me.
Okay.
There's my email address if you want to ask me any questions.
There you go. Well, you could even ask him a question tonight. Why not?
Or, yeah.
Okay, so that kind of concludes the formal part. We just wanted to give a little bit of information out there. So now we're into the Q&A. So anyone who would like to ask a question about anything is very welcome to do that, and I will try to point you in the right direction. Yeah.
Willie, you made an analogy to the power demand of Denmark as being needed to run Bitcoin transactions.
Yeah.
And said that by comparison Scotcoin was infinitesimal. But could you be a bit more specific, because you're not running hundreds of billions of dollars worth of transactions every day, which is what's happening with Bitcoin. So clearly, what are you suggesting, that for the same number of transactions, would it be like Luxembourg or what?
No, probably more like. That's good. Possibly, I think even saying the power bill for the Citadel would probably be overstating the case. We have a very, very, very efficient consensus mechanism, and
so how does it differ to Bitcoin? Because typically, as I understand it, any Bitcoin transaction needs verified by about 6 machines, 6 in across the distributed web. So
yes, that's correct. This is using the proof of work consensus mechanism. We use proof of elapsed time mechanism, and that in itself is inherently much, much more efficient. And it can be more efficient because we don't need, because we know who all the actors are, all the participants are. We know who they are, right? We don't need, we're not dealing with anonymous actors at all. If some anonymous person on the Bitcoin protocol puts in some dubious information, some dubious transactions, it takes an awful lot of mathematical working out very, very quickly to find these and identify them. Right? Using the proof of elapsed time, because we know who the participants are, we can very, very quickly identify anything that is dubious. And as a result, our processes can be so much faster and so much lighter. It really is an incredible difference.
So over time, how do you stop double payments, or how do you do that?
Because we can stop the double payments because we can do the same amount of checking, but we don't need to do we do not need to do millions of transactions to prove that the work has been done. We are working on actively proof of elapsed time. In actual fact, to confirm, and I'll come to you just in a second, to confirm that the block, we talked about the block of transactions, it's actually relatively trivial to prove that that block is either correct or incorrect. But to prove it in such a way that all of the participants on the network who have no reason to trust each other and actively distrust each other, to prove that the work has been done, that is valid, takes an awful lot of power. We simply do not need to do that with proof of elapsed time. It just works an awful lot faster. And believe me, when we saw it, we thought this is magic, and we were very, very pleased. But we have proved that we can eliminate that double spend problem in very much the same way. There are various consensus mechanisms. Proof of work is the one that is used most widely. There's proof of stake, there's proof of elapsed time, there are various others. They have their advantages, their disadvantages. For us, proof of elapsed time works very well, but proof of elapsed time will only work if you can identify the participants. And we have a win-win situation here. We want to be regulated. We know that we cannot, the cryptocurrency, in fact cryptocurrency in general, cannot move forward without regulation. And that means identified participants. Your question, lady.
Could you explain the proof of elapsed time process, please?
The proof of elapsed time process is basically at random. We choose somebody who will identify, who will actually do the transaction. And all the participants are given a timer. And when that timer counts down, the one who is first, the one who is the shortest, who has been allocated this random time, the one who is the shortest is picked to do it. And then we check that several times and run that through, so it's much faster. We do it in a much lighter way.
What incentive is there to stay on?
Sorry.
Hang on.
Yeah,
To do what?
I can't hear you, sorry.
Pick to do what?
yes.
To do the validation.
To actually perform the validation and to effectively audit that page of the ledger. If you look at, when we talk about blocks, another way of thinking about blocks is as actual pages in a ledger. If you were filling out a ledger hand by hand, old double entry bookkeeping, you know, you'll fill one page and then you'll start another page. Well, for us, when we've got enough transactions to fill one page, we call that a block, and then we check that's correct, and then we move on.
So you're,
What's the reward for staying on?
Hang on, one at a time.
How are you rewarding people?
Sorry?
How are you going to reward people to stay on to do the checking?
We will reward people in it. People are used to being rewarded at the moment with proof of work.
Yeah.
There's the mining and there's a reward for doing that. We will work differently in the participants in the network will be rewarded for actively participating in the network. and there will be a reward for each one who does that. So you're incentivised to stay online. But one thing that has to be made clear is, with Bitcoin at the moment, there is a living, there is a very good living to be made as a miner and validating these transactions, right? With Scotcoin, with our new blockchain, there is no such great earning opportunity because there doesn't need to be. And as such, we will actively reward the participants from Scotcoin that we've reserved for such a purpose, rather than the way it works with Bitcoin at the moment, where it seems as if they're mining and actually doing work, right? It costs an awful lot to run a Bitcoin mining farm, the cost of the electricity. You know, there are many people on it. We already talked about how change the slide, how it's equivalent to the cost of Denmark. There is not the same need for this power usage. Therefore, there is not the same reward to be earned by validating Scotcoin transactions. Yes, we will make it worthwhile. We will reward people who help our network run. But please don't think that you're going to make an awful lot of money setting up a Scotcoin mining farm.
But you're still going to have to encourage people to stay online, so...
Yes, we will encourage people to stay online.
Selling nodes.
And actually, by being part of, by running that, we will make it worth their while. Now, the actual details of that, we're still to decide who's exactly going to get what, how much for what, but we will reward participants for actively being on the network.
Hang on. This gentleman over here has been desperately trying to ask the question.
Two or three questions, that's okay. Some of them are quite short. The first one I'll start with is the current market. Is there a current market price for Scotcoin? Because I'm a bit confused. I've been on ScotcoinProject.com and you can buy, say, a couple hundred a year.
Yes. At the moment,
they go on free wallets, for example, but then it's hard to find out if they've gone up and down. I went back to the site a few months later and I saw that you could purchase for the same value of money the same number of coins. So I thought, are you compensating, giving away coins cheaper run? I don't understand how the price is fluctuating.
At the moment, we have the only place you can buy Scotcoin directly for pounds, shillings, and pence is from our site, straightforwardly. And that price on that site, in fact, has risen quite a lot over the last 18 months or so. I can't remember exactly what it started at, but it was, let's just say it started
It was about 78p for 1,000, I remember, about 18 months ago, yeah.
It was a pound or whatever it was sometime, and it's now gone up.
I don't know why I can remember that.
That won't have changed. It won't have changed because we haven't changed the price. There is also the counterparty exchange called the DEX, Decentralized Exchange it stands for. But you have to buy Bitcoin, you then have to buy XCP, which is the counterparty thing, and then you get Scotcoin. So by the time you've done all that, you've lost all the money anyway. So that's the answer to that question.
Simple, sorry, it doesn't lose you money.
No, okay.
Counterparty wallet is actually a lot cheaper than Scotcoin, but I was going to ask that question.
The number of tokens, the number of Scotcoins out there, are they pre-mined or is there a fixed number, or can you
at the moment
grow more?
there are 1 billion at the moment, and that is fixed. Okay.
Was a discrepancy of a factor of 10? Why is it so high?
Say it again, I couldn't hear you.
You can actually buy 10 times the amount of Scotcoin on a counterparty wallet as you can on the Scotcoin project. Why is there such a discrepancy?
Because you have to buy all the other things.
Well, I've done.
Please do.
Also,
I've done.
Good.
Yeah, one of the reasons for that is that we mentioned earlier the scam site that had been operating. We know that because we can trace where Scotcoin is going. We know that the coins that are on the decks at the moment offered at that ridiculously low price are actually stolen. That's why we do not recommend anybody to use the decks. We mention the decks is there because it would be wrong for us to try and deny its existence, because you can't. But what is on the decks and at that ridiculously low price is there because the guy who's offering it paid nothing for these coins, and in fact he swindled them. And that is why the price on the DEX is so low. But the fact is, as we've said, the DEX is so very difficult and obscure to use, and normally the volume on it is so low that it's not really a realistic valuation of what the coin is worth. Because after all, if I go out and steal a motor, I can come on Gumtree and sell it for 500 quid. Doesn't matter if it's a 1,500 or a 2,000 or a 5,000 pound motor, as long as I get 500 quid for it, I've made money because I paid nothing for it. And that's exactly what these low prices on the DEX are just now. But we know where the stolen coins are, and when we come to migrate people, we talk about migration from V2 to V3. V2 is the old coin, V3 is the new coin, and it's almost entirely a new coin. We will be migrating people from V2 to V3, but we know who all the addresses are, and we know the stolen addresses, and we can trace through which wallets coins went, and I can assure you that any coins that were not obtained legally will not be migrated. So I would seriously advise people not to buy off the DEX. It may look like a bargain, but as always, if something looks too good to be true, it is too good to be true. And unfortunately, we cannot enforce that on the DEX because the DEX is an autonomous operation.
I think it's important to point out that not all coins and DEX are stolen.
I know.
Yeah.
Just in case Willie was referring that.
Yes, but the ones.
Hang on, one at a time. There you go, right, you.
Are you going to have a migration time from V2 to V3?
There will be.
So once that's cut, that's your...
No, because once what we have said already is that there will be a period in which there is a bonus for people to migrate. At the end of that period, you will still have what you have at the moment, you just won't have the bonus. What you do, we can't force you to change, we can't make anybody do anything. If they want not to change, they don't need to. They can still keep them, they can do whatever they like with them. But the whole point is that for the period when there is the bonus, there will be a fixed period, and that period will end, obviously.
There are many, many good reasons to migrate. The most pressing of which is that the Scotcoin that we have at the moment, V2, will not be developed any further. It is not fantastically easy to trade, to use, to transact at the moment. That's unfortunate, that's the way it is, but that's how the counterparty protocol has unfortunately developed. For that reason and that reason alone, we needed to move to V3, and we took the opportunity to add a lot of other features on it. So V3 will be usable, and you're very much encouraged to migrate. V2 will still exist, but frankly we see the value of V2 in the long term diminishing substantially. So
Yes.
it's very much in your interest to
When are you
migrate.
expecting to get to V2?
Okay.
When are you expecting to launch V3 or move over?
When are we expecting to launch V3? That's a very good question. The answer is when it's ready. We're in the process of doing the minimal viable product at the moment. We're working very hard. We've got guys here who are actually doing it, some of them, and it's working very well. So we hope it will be sooner rather than later, but we have no definitive time.
Are there plans for retailers to come on board?
I can't hear you.
Do you have any plans for retailers to come on board?
Absolutely, yes. I mean, the whole point is that to be a currency, you have to be used. So the whole point is that we very much want retailers to be using Scotcoin, and we intend that they will be using Scotcoin. We have various people that are already talking to do that.
Using machines?
Gordon.
How are retailers and businesses going to accept Scotcoin? Is that part of the V3 project to create?
David.
As part of everything we've been talking about, the Scotcoin project is going to be relaunched. and we will be appointing a managing director, an international board of esteemed advisors, a revamped board, and these advisors will stretch around the globe, and we know who quite a lot of them are. They will have a mandate for recommending what we do with the coin, and one of the serious things under discussion is that we're talking about the principle of quantitative easing, or developing an ecosystem, quantitative easing from the bottom up, whereby those that have least get most, and those that have most get least. So what does that mean? It could involve, and remember it's all under discussion, it could involve engaging unemployed young people, paying them in Scotcoin to work with the disadvantaged, the aged, the unemployed, the homeless, and that will and they will be paid in Scotcoin for doing that. You then say, well, what are they going to do with the coin? Well, they can do with the coin what I can do and you can do. They can save it, they can keep it, they can sell it, or they can spend it, and that's where your retailers come in. So we're looking at the principle of having signing on fees, whereby selected retailers will be given Scotcoin to offer, their to accept Scotcoin, so that if an unemployed person with some Scotcoin can go into Greg's or use It-Is-On or use Domino's Pizzas to spend the coin. And these retailers will all be encouraged to do so by signing up to the Scotcoin ecosystem, and this ecosystem is expected to be global rather than just Scottish. But it has to start off in Scotland because that's where the whole coin was born from. But there is a quite sophisticated plan at an early stage to develop this ecosystem, signing up retailers and paying young people and others to work in exchange for the coin. So that's a central part of what the Scotcoin project will be involved in.
All these plans are these all make up part of the MVP as well. Because what we need to do is make the coin, give it value through its utility by being able to spend. At the moment, most cryptocurrencies are simply speculative instruments, stores of value. They themselves have little utility in themselves. We intend Scotcoin to have, for its value, to be drawn from its utility.
Okay, hang on,
in fact, people can use it.
So, Willie, is there any comparison or similarity with what you're doing with proof of concept and what Ethereum have said they are also going to do, which is move to proof of concept? And that is a utility blockchain.
I think you may be getting slightly confused there. Ethereum are hoping to move to proof of stake as a consensus mechanism. Ethereum at the moment is proof of work. They have spoken long and loud about moving to proof of stake. As yet, that has not happened. We hope it will. But it's important here to make a distinction. We talk about proof of work, proof of elapsed time, proof of stake. These are consensus mechanisms. And we've also got this proof of concept. Please, the proof of concept is quite different. Proof of concept is like a project planning stage, in that we've got the proof of concept, and then we move on to the next stage, which is minimum viable product. But that has got absolutely nothing to do with proof of stake, proof of work, proof of elapsed time. Simply, there's a proof of at the start, and I'm sorry if that's a little confusing.
It's the use of the word proof is confusing it.
Yeah, that's confusing. I'm sorry if we've
The question I'd asked earlier on was, I've got lots, as you know, I've been involved with Scotcoin for a long time. I go to the Village Hotel every day and everybody's all round about me, what's happening with Scotcoin, what's happening with Scotcoin. What I'm interested in is knowing how the Village Hotel or other retailers will take my Scotcoin. We put cards into MasterCard machines, we do that. What will be the process for accepting Scotcoin in retailers? Is it going to be a different box? Is it you're going to do a deal with MasterCard so that we can use Scotcoin debit cards? Well, what's the actual process of spending Scotcoin in question?
Initially, by doing it wallet to wallet, and you could have a wallet behind the till to take it on, and we hope to partner with payment processors later and have a prepaid card in Scotcoin. But at the moment, we're still in discussion on that, and it would be wrong for me to
So
say.
initially, wallet to wallet, just as we do just now.
Wallet
Foundry
to
Square,
wallet to
free
wallet, but we will be making this much, much simpler and much more straightforward than it is at the moment. Because
It's a challenge for all crypto and digital currencies, of course, spending them. That's
yeah, you can getting them
rich man.
getting them is relatively easy, although it's not easy in some cases. Actually doing something with it and using it is different, and that's where we intend to be different, because we intend ours to be able to be spent easily and to be traded and transacted. And as I say again, the value comes from the utility of the coin rather than it being a store of value. We want people to use Scotcoin because it's an easy way of transferring funds. It's a cheap, efficient way of transferring funds. At the moment, you can put your hand in your pocket and put cash down, or you can pull out a card, put it in the machine. Every time you put a card in the machine, somebody somewhere is taking between 2 and 4% off that on each transaction. We intend to make it an awful lot faster, an awful lot easier, and that is where we will really deliver value, especially to the small and medium enterprises that at the moment are losing so much in bank charges.
What exchanges do the company plan on in the future years ahead, try and get listed on for purchase in Scotcoin? It's also good to see that you already have the facility to use your debit card if you want to go and buy Scotcoin, which is an issue for other currencies. But for growing, and is there any big, you'd like to grow the coin to a stage where you get listed, or not coin-based, maybe a smaller version, you know?
Sorry?
You going to answer that?
Yes, no, I'll take that one. One of the points about the exchanges is, and this goes back to, if you're on an exchange, you're entirely at the mercy of what's going on around about you. One of the reasons that we were perfectly happy to come off Bittrex was because there was huge speculation, the price was going up, prices going down. You've seen it with Bitcoin in the last few weeks, prices come crashing down, goes up again, comes down. That is absolutely useless for a currency. That is of no use whatsoever. If you're coming back to the retailer, if you take 1,000 Scotcoin tonight and you think that's worth 10 quid or 20 quid or 100 quid, you don't want to wake up tomorrow morning and find out it's only worth a fiver. You've got to know if you take it for 10 quid, you're going to get 10 quid. And therefore, when we come to the new coin, Scotcoin, we will be making sure that the value is stable. And that's how it will operate.
An observation, back to the adoption, that is key. There are other currencies out there and other services that will allow us to spend the cryptocurrency, but the retailers will not have to change anything. They will get paid in fiat currency. And to me, that's the way to go. Make it easy for the retailers not to install any new hardware, any new software, continue to use existing payment processes, but we can spend a cryptocurrency from our device. And to me, I think that's the way you should be going.
Well,
Absolutely, and I lie awake at night worrying about that.
Instead of actually doing Dashcoin to Dashcoin wallets, that's adding
that's
additional
what we're
layers.
doing. You should be able to, I mean, has anybody here got Revolut cards? So basically you can go into any store here, you know, with dollars in your prepaid card and just pay for beers or cheeseburgers or whatever, and behind the scenes it will just convert the requisite amount of dollars into sterling. Well, that's the way we are thinking, you know, if your wallet's got Scotcoin in it. So,
that's the way to do it, because
that's
Crypterium's coming. Crypterium is going to be here very, very shortly with it.
Well,
Dashcoin are doing the same as well. There's lots of other currencies out there are ready to do it. And
yeah,
the
well, we're
challenges-
ready to do it as well. That's why we're doing everything that we're doing. But you can sum up the problem is, like, one of my establishments was probably the first in Britain to accept Scotcoin, you know, for a pint of beer. It was only Monday to Thursday, and it was only for one product. And the process at the time was really very simple, because you just went in with your Indie wallet, or whatever your wallet was, did a QR, you had a debit and a credit. It happened almost immediately for a relatively small cost, and the guy, the account was debited, got his beer, and everybody was happy. As the crypto market has grown and all the speculators all around the world have got involved, you can no longer do that, because the guy's not going to wait half an hour at his worst, you know, for the debit and the credit to take place. And the transaction fee at its worst was what, Temple?
Well,
$40?
I actually saw one of over $500.
Well, I was not going to pay $500 for a pint of Scone Destiny Lager, are you? And then all the intermediate currency risk, you know, your sterling is going up and down, your bitcoins are going up and down, the XCP is going up and down, and no retailer is going to see his GP disappear in half an hour, 5 minutes even, or vice versa. So if you want Scotcoin to be successful, you've got to get rid of that. And that's why we have to do what we're doing. In fact, I'd go as far as saying there's not really any future for Scotcoin on the counterparty protocol. And we have no choice but to up sticks and leave.
I just want to get one point in on this. You're saying we're moving from V2 to V3. Is it onto one exchange? So
The
for every
terms
one
are still to
Scotcoin
be-
we've got V2, we'll get one
The terms are
V3.
still to be decided. There will be an incentive stroke a bonus for doing it, exact terms to be agreed. It will be made very attractive to migrate, but as Temple said earlier, it cannot force anybody to migrate, and if nobody wants to migrate, they don't have to migrate.
We'll lose any
But
value
it-
moving over.
Say that again,
We'll
sorry?
lose any value.
No,
No.
it'll
Well, I can't tell you what the value of
minimum. It will be a minimum of 1 to 1.
Well, that's not the answer though.
No.
Nobody knows what the value of anything is tomorrow, never mind next week.
Yeah, but one version 2 will be equal to one version 3.
Sorry?
One version 2 Scotcoin will be equal to one version 3 Scotcoin.
Well, the terms of, you know, still to be decided, but it will be made very attractive. What we're not in control of, or nobody is anywhere, is value, because you can't tell you what the value is tomorrow, or next week, or next year.
How many coins are going to be available in V3?
That
Apart
again
from
is
1
still,
million.
that's still to be decided as well.
Are you hoping to make it £1 for a coin? To make it stable?
It'd be wonderful if we could make it £1 for
I'd
coin.
love to make it a pound for a coin, but that might be a little optimistic.
Mate, it takes
Can
a
we get a
week or two.
signature on that, please?
At the moment, one Scotcoin is worth 2 pence. I would love it to be a pound, but
Anyway,
that's...
it remains to be seen. Remains to be seen. There was somebody else had their hand up and I didn't spot it. It was you over there. Sorry.
Scottish Government at all?
Are we going to talk to the Scottish Government? The short answer to that is yes. We are. David, do you want to take that one?
Well, the answer is yes.
Are you hoping to get some sort of unofficial nod?
What is an unofficial nod?
For a win.
Yeah, I'm going to answer this in a way if you don't
Yes.
mind. Sorry? No, the first thing is that, you know, currency is not a devolved issue. But notwithstanding that, as I said earlier, Temple and I acquired the IP, you know, from Derek Nesbitt. And it's our intention no, it's not our intention, we will be offering the IP gratis to the government, which they can accept or reject. That might even happen next week. If they reject it, we will be donating, gifting, whatever you want to call it, the IP to the Scotcoin project. So if the government wants it, you know, they can take it, because that's what we're going to do basically. But they don't have to accept it, and I have no idea what the reaction will be. You will probably find out soon.
Yeah, I just wondered.
Hang on, gentleman here.
Whoever asked the question. Was that you, Alan?
No.
As David knows, I'm a very simple person, and I apologise in advance of the question because it's obvious to me that there are a number of people in this room who really understand the concept, and I'm afraid I don't really understand the concept. So I have one question at one end of the spectrum and one question at the other end, which touches on what I think David was saying. If I have a £10 note in my wallet, my personal wallet here, not that private wallet, and it says on it that the bank concerned promises to pay the bearer on demand £10 sterling. And my understanding of that is that that deal is backed by gold. in the bank?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, I know they don't have the right plan amount of gold to pay out all the funds, but theoretically, in the past, that's so you could, but maybe it's just a confidence thing. So what I want to ask you is, because you've mentioned several times tonight, store of value, you've talked about proof of elapsed time, which I don't understand, proof of concept, which I don't understand. What, in layman's terms, or in simple terms, for a simple person like me, backs the value of Scotcoin? So that's one question.
Well, let me answer that one first. What backs the value of a pound? If you go along to the Bank of England and say, here's my £10, I want £10, they'll give you 10 coins, or 2 fivers, or another £10 note. So there is nothing actually backing the pound. It's just that we accept that we will take £10 and give £10 of value back for it. But what you have to remember is, and in fact, funnily enough, I was looking at this the other day for something completely different. In 1900, one old penny, that's like half a p, could buy as much as £1 now buys. So in other words, we've had massive inflation. One thing about cryptocurrencies is there is no inherent inflation. So first, straight off, you're better off. So that's the answer to your first question. So what's your second question?
That begs a hard question. Okay. You said there's no inherent inflation, there's no inherent value either.
No, there people. It's like what's a house worth? It's only what worth someone's willing to pay for it.
Okay, well, let me move on from there. The other end of the coin, because you talked about, and this is obviously critical, how will retailers accept Scotcoin? Somebody here asked, and David's talked about cards and wallets behind the desk, and I kind of get that. And you talked about paying unemployed people in Scotland. But for this to become a really usable concept, surely the long game would be everybody is paid in Scotcoin,
yes.
Everybody accepts Scotcoin, and more importantly, the retailer who accepts Scotcoin is able to pay his suppliers
yes.
in Scotcoin.
Absolutely.
Otherwise, there ain't any point in him having
absolutely.
Scotcoin.
Absolutely.
Now, so can you kind of develop that?
Well, the answer to that is that's something we're working on all the time, and it's something we're acutely aware of. But can I just tell you a little story? Like, I always get this in every time because I think it's so good. The reason I got really interested in Scotcoin in the first instance, or even cryptocurrencies in the first instance, is I used to live in Switzerland. And in Switzerland, they have a thing called VIR, W-I-R. VIR was created, you can look it up on the internet, very interesting thing. During the 1930s, when there was no money anywhere, there was no liquidity anywhere, groups of Swiss people got together and said, we somehow have to keep our country alive with some kind of something. And you know, taking a sheep and getting 2 goats and stuff is really not terribly efficient. So they set up what was called VIR, and VIR in German means us or we. Now that started in the 1930s, and there's a whole lot of different things about VIR, but VIR has continued to grow. It's not a true cryptocurrency, it doesn't work on a blockchain, it simply works in a ledger, but it's the same basic system. VIR now has something like 70,000 businesses in Switzerland that accept it, and they do more than £500 million worth of business every year. And it's not an either or, and the same thing applies to cryptocurrencies. It's not an either you take cryptocurrency or you take pounds. There's a blend. In Switzerland, individuals very frequently will go along to buy a new bed or something like that, and they will say it's 1,000 Swiss francs. I've got 500 here, I'll give you 500 VIR. No problem, because the guy knows he can use his 500, exactly as you say, to go somewhere else and give it to somebody else, because there's all these different people that use it. And we're aiming to be exactly the same thing. If we can do that in Scotland, particularly within Scotland, with the SMEs, we've absolutely cracked it.
Okay, so my last question or point then, at the minute, head around that one, is I talked to the Minister last week, Derek Mackay, and I asked him about the currency, because you know, as an SNP supporter, put my hand up. That was the main reason why we lost the referendum, my opinion, last time. Didn't have an answer to the currency question, or didn't have a plausible answer, or a credible answer to the currency question. Based on what he said, and I know there's a report going on at the minute that I haven't released yet, but based on what he told me, I'm in no doubt that their answer is the how. You know, and it's different from last time. They will say that the pound or any currency is tradable anywhere that will accept that currency. So it doesn't have to be our pound or your pound, it's a pound. Pound is a pound. But if Scotcoin could be developed to replace that, wow, fantastic. As far as, you know, I think that would be a solid answer. But how far away from that are you?
You make a very interesting point. The light bulb moment for everything we're talking about just now for me was when Alistair Darling eviscerated Alex Salmond, and that's not a political statement. It's basically what happened, because that's the point at which the referendum was basically lost, because Alex Salmond didn't have an alternative. And so having said that, it's certainly true. And I had dinner with, forgot his name now, Mervyn King, you know, shortly there afterwards. There's nothing to stop Scotland using the pound, which is what you've just said there.
Yes.
You've just said Derek Mackay said that as well. That's true. The point is, you have no control over the pound. That's the point. You have no control over the Bank of England, because that's not an offer. You have no control over the monetary policy, whether there's quantitative easing or not. That's a foreign jurisdiction that would determine that. It's a foreign jurisdiction that would determine what your interest rates are. That's the difference. That's called sterlingization. And that's not monetary independence. That's basically following the economic policy of a larger neighbour that you share an island with. So that was the light bulb moment for me, that I said, when I remember speaking to you the next day, wouldn't it be great if we could have a Scottish cryptocurrency? And he said, well, there's one in existence and the guy wants to sell it because he's bitten off more than he can chew. And that's what happened. And then ever since we've been on a learning curve, and we've basically come to the conclusion that there's a great future for a global Scotcoin, or as the Americans said when we had a meeting in New York, great idea, did you have to call it Scotchcoin? But it's a global coin with a Scottish ethos, on a state-of-the-art blockchain with all the accoutrements that go around it and give it the best chance it has, or it could have of gaining traction in this ever-changing world. One thing's for sure though, the current Scotcoin, if we can call it that, has no future for all the reasons we've talked about. We have to make it, as you're a financial advisor, Alan, or used to be, we have to make it comply with all the financial regulations of the day. We have to remove all the intermediate currency risk. We have to develop an ecosystem with the retailers online and in-store. We have to distribute it to the people that need it most. And we have to have a secondary market, and we have to have security. What Brian says is probably one of the most important things of all. We have to have a bomb-proof security set up with this coin. It's something that's often overlooked. But there's this whole space, crypto space, is a shark-infested and full of thieves and vagabonds. So we have to have a very robust security system. So we're trying to cover all the angles.
Yeah, so regarding the ecosystem that you're talking about, obviously it needs to grow. What's the easiest way for a retailer from an early stage to cash out in a sense, as in they've got some Bitcoin and they need to use national currency and they need to sort of get that currency as quickly as possible to pay their bottom line? How would that process work? And obviously that's both.
Do you mean Bitcoin or do you mean Scotcoin?
Scotcoin.
Scotcoin.
Yeah.
Well, the short answer at the moment is that one of the reasons we haven't pushed the retailer situation is because we're on the counterparty blockchain. It's a bit messy and not very useful. The whole point about when we become onto the new blockchain is that it will become very much easier. The retailers will be able to take it much easier, but it will also, it will operate on the system that David's talking, Revolut, which I don't know if you had it. Well, basically speaking, what Revolut does is you have a wallet in your phone, and it says you've got so many pounds, so many euros, so many dollars, so many Scotcoin. And when you go into somewhere and the guy says that 10 quid and you say, oh, I've got quite a lot of Scotcoin here, you say, okay, I'll pay the Scotcoin. Now the Scotcoin will automatically transfer into pounds, if that's what he wants. He might say, the guy might say, well actually I don't want pounds, I want dollars. It'll do it as well. So that's the kind of system we're looking at.
But you're saying Scotcoin's cheaper, so the transaction, you think that would be what would gain traction in the end and say, actually, I'll take the Scotcoin.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's part of
it would be simpler and more
part of the
efficient
proposition. Yeah.
to transfer,
But you'd have like an
to
Apple,
transact.
your Apple Pay or your Android Pay, the equivalent. You'll have an app that would do that, contactless.
Yeah.
You could decide, right, I'll give you my Scotcoin,
Yeah.
cheaper transaction fees.
Yeah. Hang on, there was this gentleman over here was asking another question.
The Scotcoin project website and that thing there in the business, are they separate? What's the relationship between the two? Are they all together, or just to understand the structure of how Scotcoin works a bit better?
Right, well the Scotcoin project, which is the website you're looking at, is run by the Scotcoin project CIC. CIC is community, is community interest company. And that is specifically only for doing what I would describe as charitable works. Let's just use that expression. Now the whole point about the Scotcoin project is it was originally, idea was to educate, we're here under the auspices of Scotcoin project tonight, to give people information. We do all sorts of things to try and help people understand the blockchain and so on and so on and so on. So that is a Scotcoin project. The IP and so on, as we've said, is owned between David and myself, and we are the ones who are sorting out the blockchain.
You pay for that yourself?
Sorry, we've got...
Didn't you make me some money?
This is contentious.
Very, very simple. How Scotcoin can become this marvellous thing, people have to adopt it. So what's the work in progress there for having people adopt it? How do you see that? Just word of mouth?
Okay, well,
This,
yeah, the short answer is we're obviously working at the moment to encourage people to buy V2, which helps with everything that we're doing. But once we become on the new blockchain, we will be having a very large marketing blitz, believe me. We believe also, in fact, interestingly enough, you're talking about word of mouth. We've somewhere, this is actually quite interesting. This is actually showing you all the countries in the world where there is currently people holding Scotcoin. And one of the more interesting ones is in fact in South America, because there is a thing called Scotiabank, which is actually Canadian, and everybody trusts Scotiabank. They don't trust any of the South American banks, and they think Scotcoin has got something to do with Scotiabank. So it's, as you say, word of mouth works very well. Thank you very much. Yeah. But yeah, there is going to be, and there is a very large marketing project, which is in the planning stages at this point.
It took a long time, you know, many people haven't even heard of cryptocurrency.
Exactly. Well, it's in its infancy. It's in its infancy. It's in its infancy. I mean, Bitcoin is only 9 years old, and it's only really 4 years that there's been any other cryptocurrencies virtually. Sorry, back to you.
You've been referring to Scotcoin as a cryptocurrency. By definition, you're using a centralised blockchain. Why would we call it a cryptocurrency and not a digital currency? cryptocurrency infers anonymity. I can transfer it straight from the without anybody knowing about it. So why would we refer to Scotcoin as a cryptocurrency?
Well, I think there's two bits to that question. The first is, what we're saying is you're not going to be able to do that very much longer, because in fact I think it's July this year, both the American Treasury Department and in fact the EU have said they're going to bring out regulations in respect of currencies which are not fiat currencies. Let's just use that expression. That's the first point. Second point is that the taking away of the anonymity is not a bad thing. People sort of think it's a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. It's a really good thing, because it's going to make everything very much easier, cheaper, better for everyone. And I'm not just talking about Scotcoin, I'm talking about all the other currencies that will, I'm assuming, have to go down that route.
That'll be nigh impossible for Bitcoin, certainly.
Well, Bitcoin has got its own issues, and you know, we will see what happens.
As I said earlier on, I've been involved in Scotcoin for a long time, and obviously you guys have got a centralised blockchain. Have any banks, finance houses raised an interest in using Scotcoin because of that very thing? That it's centralised and it's KYC'd and AML. Because my view on that is, if I own Scotcoin and major banks and finance institutions were coming to me, they might be offering me significant amounts of cash for it. And I just wondered, are you guys 100% committed to rolling this out for Scotland, for the Scottish people initially, and that the guys that are sitting here will be the guys that are sitting here in 4 or 5 years' time, and hopefully Scotcoin's not worth a couple of pence?
I don't know how much Scotcoin is going to be worth in 4 or 5 days, never mind.
No, I understand that. But, you know, I just...
Look, at the end of the day, when I first got involved in this, we used to go to these meetups in the code base in Edinburgh, and it was full of sort of geeky types, and you know, talking about you know, this new thing, you know, blockchains and cryptocurrencies, and it was full of libertarians who said it's the dawning of a new age, and it's the end of the banking system, and rubbish. At the end of the day, everything always converges to the centre, and I can say without qualification that as soon as, I think we said it then, as soon as banks and governments get their head around this, they'll regulate it, and that's what's happening. But there was only reckoned to be 5,000 people in the whole world, and this is true, estimated in 2000, when was it, 14, 15? You know, had a rudimentary understanding of what a blockchain was or what a cryptocurrency was, and the numbers are still tiny. I mean, they're a lot more than they were, but they're still tiny. And if you speak to your average bank manager or even politician, they still haven't a clue what you're talking about. So it's a very, very early stage of evolution. It's not. We're not at a kindergarten yet, so to speak. It's got a long way to go. Every day is a new day.
I would just say something.
I have no idea where we'll end up.
Say something quickly. I mean, it's the hypocrisy. There's nothing more anonymous than crushed fivers, pocket full of crushed fivers. It's up to us guys to turn it on its head and show that, you know, it's fiat. It's the end of their days.
Well, the banks would love to get rid of cash, because that's the bit that costs them money. And you know, all this thing about contactless and all the rest of it is brilliant, because they actually make some money out of it, as opposed to pound notes. And in fact, they charge, you know, £6, 100 or whatever, 1,000, whatever it is nowadays, and more for taking money and moving money around. It's very expensive.
There's an active campaign that's undeclared to get rid of cash. You know, it's now more expensive for businesses to process cash than it is to process plastic. And that's if you can find a bank to bank the cash in and a branch to get your change out of. You know, so cash is disappearing. Even when I was in Costas 3 months ago, there was 8 people from like 60 odds down to teenagers, not one of them paid in cash. It's all contactless now. In the businesses I've got, plastic's up and cash is a way down. You know, cash is a dirty, disease-ridden waste of time, and it's
like criminals on our world.
There's all the criminals and the unbanked that will use it.
Your map there, I mean, it was a personal question, you don't need to answer. How many Scotcoin customers do you
Because it's quite impressive.
The short answer is we reckon about 3,500. There is a very large block which have about 1,000 people in it, which were people that were on Bittrex, and for reasons completely beyond me, a lot of them haven't taken them out. And in fact, there's just been an announcement that Bittrex is actually getting rid of about 80 odd different currencies that are on it. And we've put out a thing saying you must, if you've got any, come out. And funnily enough, there's another one behind you, sorry. Funnily enough, there's a gentleman in Australia who obviously hadn't even paid any attention to anything and phoned me up just a couple of days ago and was desperate to find out how to get out of Bittrex. He didn't even know that it was happening, but see, somewhere along the line he'd got it. So the short answer is, that's it. Sorry, the gentleman at the back there, his hand up.
Since the early days, the conversation about dilution has been rumbling away. Those that held Scotcoin in the early days were constantly talking about the idea of giving away and spending in order to then generate growth. And I've heard that that there's a plan for some dilution, which I think is necessary. But as a holder from the very beginning, I'm curious to know how that looks. So for me, it's always been, there's always been the socialist side of me and the capitalist side of me rubbing up against each other.
Warring.
War, because I want to hold all these Scotcoin and I want them to grow in value so that I can go and buy a house. And then at the same time, I know that I need to spend them and give them away in order for that value to rise. So there's always been since the beginning that strange.
I think the answer to your question is that when are you talking about when Derek was first involved?
Yeah, I was talking about going back right to the beginning. That was
very
the
beginning.
Okay.
Okay.
Facebook, but
well,
I'm
Derek,
also
Derek,
hearing, and I heard David say that earlier tonight.
Yeah.
There needs to be less top heavy.
Yeah. Derek, with due respect, Derek made the mistake of not spreading the coins far enough, and in fact.
And indiscriminately.
And indiscriminately as well. It was, the thing was wrongly done. It wasn't targeted in any way. Our plan will include very specific targeted giving away in inverted commas. One of the things I always say, rightly or wrongly, is think of a Tesco voucher. In order to get a Tesco voucher, you have to buy stuff in Tesco, you get a point on a card, Tesco then sends you a voucher, and you then go to other people with your voucher and get whatever you want. Now we can cut through all that. We could simply give Tesco or get Tesco to use Scotcoin, and they wouldn't need to actually do all the bit about the value of the tokens that they send out, the vouchers, and have arrangements for all these other people. They could just give the people Scotcoin, people would go and spend them. So that's kind of our vision on that particular point. So I take your point. Yes, it's going to work in the way that there will be Scotcoin that will end up being targeted to be given away, yes. Sorry, gentlemen.
Sorry, will that coin be coming from the holding that the project currently has, or will you be asking the top 1% to make some kind of contribution there?
There will be a contribution from the people who are currently the largest holders, yes. Sorry, you.
Some currently owns Scotcoin, are they able to sell it, or do they need to reach the ICO?
I can't hear you, sorry.
If someone currently owns Scotcoin,
Yeah.
will they be able to sell it, or do they need to wait to the ICO?
You can sell it. We keep an informal list of people who are looking to sell, and we have an informal list of people who are looking to buy. So if you want to sell some, tell us how many you have, what you want to sell, what price you want. If we can help you, we can. If we can't, we can't. Simple as that.
But there's not going to be an ICO.
No.
There's too many sharks and piranhas.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's too easy to end up in jail.
And I don't like
I want to go back to my last question. I'd asked about the level of commitment from you guys. It's this, you guys have got no intention of moving Scotcoin to, you know, selling it to somebody else, or you guys are fully committed to the implementation of Scotcoin in Scotland and thereafter the bigger world?
The short
What does
answer
sell
to that
it
is
mean? What is it?
Sorry?
What is it? You said sell it.
well, let's just go back. I'll answer your question in like 3 different ways. First of all, we've just said we're hoping that the Scottish Government would take it from us for free, so that's obviously a pretty big commitment. If they don't take it, we do know that the Scotcoin project will take it, because we can make them. But the third part of the thing is, and I always say this to people, there is always a price for everything. So if you come along with £2 billion tomorrow and say to David and me, I want to buy the Scotcoin ecosystem that you have at the moment for £2 billion, I think I could say David might accept, and I think I would as well.
That would be version 2, not version 3.
I would take it for anything. But that's
I've got a question. I'd always thought when I'd purchased Scotcoin that Scotcoin would have its own permission blockchain, as you talk about. Is that this new blockchain that's being created, that's going to proof of elapsed time, or MVP rather? Is that owned by the Scotcoin project, or is that an external business to Scotcoin?
David?
Well, that will be owned by the Scotcoin project.
That blockchain project is owned by the Scotcoin project.
Yeah.
Is that,
Hang on, we've got 2 people.
Which is a community interest company.
okay.
That means nobody can run off with the assets.
So you're going to have a building and run servers and be running transactions yourself, or are you decentralizing this?
It'll be decentralized.
So you're going to ask people to come in and run those?
It'll be decentralized. It will be decentralized, yes.
Yeah, it'll be decentralised, and there will be incentives for people to provide computing power to make the whole thing happen, which is essentially what's happening with with Bitcoin miners just now. They provide computing power and are well rewarded for it. Right? With the new system that we have, it will not require as much sheer power. Therefore, there will not be the same. There will not be the same rewards proportionately for what's happening. But yes, there will be rewards, because it's imperative that we have this shared out as widely as possible throughout the whole system. Yes, we will kick it off. We have to be the seed to start it, but we intend that almost all of the transaction validation will be done out with the machinery, the mechanisms we set up. We only put up the framework for it.
Selling nodes. Hang on. You've got to sell nodes.
Sorry?
You're going to sell nodes.
No, just go into any of that at the moment. This gentleman over here, please.
I think it touches on what's just been said. It sounds like there's been a lot of development work done up to this point, which I assume you guys, and perhaps others are funding. Nobody presumably was doing it for free.
No, if only they would.
Right. So,
please, chaps.
Right. So going forward, you're talking about, obviously there's a mechanism somewhere behind it. But you're also talking about a high-powered international board, etc. Where does the cost of that come into, and the ongoing cost come into the equation? Where does the money come from to fund this?
David?
No, Temple and I have essentially funded it thus far, and there's an ongoing commitment to fund it, but not forever. Sounds a bit like Rangers, Alan.
Quite.
That's a cheap spot. But at the end of the day, this international board, which was your specific question, I'm looking for sort of volunteer who are want to be invested in the success of this enterprise. I mean, I see this as a global coin with a Scottish ethos, but it has to start somewhere. And
I
it
wrote
starts,
that down, it sounded
but it's,
good.
thank you. But it does start in Scotland. But you know, why shouldn't we be helping, you know, clean water in Haiti or very poor people in
Yes, but there'll be
Malawi?
an ongoing cost surely behind the scenes for the administration and so on. Will not?
Yeah, when we use conventional means of raising money, which is the equity markets, the debt markets, the Scotcoin market, you know, we'll look at all the different means of funding the ongoing development of the ecosystem. I don't really see any of that as a problem. But you specifically asked about the international
Yes.
board, and I have specific people in mind, as others do, and you know, they're happy to get involved at no discernible cost, because we're trying to do good things here. The gentleman at the back mentioned the perennial conflict between capitalism and socialism. You know, I wrestle with that every day. But at the end of the day, another phrase I've got in my head is you know, quantitative easing from the bottom up. You know, whereby the least get the most, and those with the most get nothing. Which is the complete opposite of what happened in 2008 or 2007 or whenever the crash was. So, you know, we're trying to do cover a lot of bases here for what I think are pretty good reasons. And if anybody makes money out of it as a consequence, that's great. Nothing wrong with that.
Can I ask you a question? You talked about ecosystem. Are you looking to expand the Scott project ecosystem to include things like smart contracts and engage with technology companies to use the blockchain for development and get revenues that way?
No, I think this blockchain will be for exclusive use. The blockchain that we've been talking about, or the guys have been talking about earlier on, is for the exclusive use of Scotcoin, the coin. And what happens thereafter will be for this board, this new board, because as I said, there will be a new CEO, there will be a new board, there will be an international board, and they will all feed off each other and think of very clever ideas for developing the ecosystem. I'm not going to second guess what that
if
is.
the blockchain is going to be that good and it's so fast, it's so secure,
Sorry?
to me it makes sense to go down that route.
What makes sense?
If the blockchain is that good.
Well, we think it is.
We think it is.
That's a decision for tomorrow.
It's important to emphasise that the new blockchain on which we are based is smart contract enabled. We will be able to enact smart contracts on the coin itself. In fact, the whole migration process will be done as part of a smart contract, and that will all be, everything will be audited. The identification of it, the rules by which the coin will develop, the advisory board, or sorry, the governance board, as opposed to an advisory board, the governance board that will run it, the functions and the way that they will operate will all be governed by smart contracts. So yeah, we are very much smart contract aware, and that was one of the major design decisions we took when we said, right, this is how we are going to look at bringing out a new blockchain. And to be smart.
Even on the news today, or when you're hearing there's people dying on the streets because they're getting their medication or the wrong kind of medication and drugs, and smart contracts could be used to validate that drug, where it comes from. There's huge potential to do good.
There is, yes.
There is, but that's unlikely to be a core feature of Scotcoin as such. Plenty of other initiatives that, yes, we were interested in with that sort of thing.
Gentleman at the back again.
So how public is the public ledger going to be? The information about who owns which wallet and personal information, are you going to have that on the public ledger, or are you going to keep that data protected within the
What will happen is that...
Hang on.
I was going to say Brian.
Well, Brian, yeah. Well, the first point is the Data Protection Act is now very serious stuff, and everything has to be completely secure and all the rest of it. GDPR comes back to Brian's situation. But the short answer is that you, if this is the way I see it, this could be wrong, but you as an individual will not be able to come along to us and say, hey, I want to know who owns this wallet, but you as the Treasury or the police or somebody can come along to us and say, hey, I want to know who owns this wallet. It's a slightly different thing.
What is important is that each user can be proven to be identified. But that doesn't mean we have to share the identification between them. We just have a user that has a flag that is set either as we know who this person is or we don't know who this person is. If you don't know who the person, if you don't know it, they don't get to play, right? So you've got to be identified, but that doesn't mean that your identity is publicly available to everybody who's there. It's like having something that proves that you are over 18-year-old. You don't have, if you've got a bit of, if you have some proof that says I am over 18, that's all you need to show. You don't need to show your passport with your photograph and your date of birth and the whole bit. All you need is a verified bit of information, verified credential that says I satisfy these conditions.
And then when we've got that information, it's deleted, completely gone.
We don't need to
keep that information
at all. Once it's verified, full stop. That's it.
So a JPEG of a passport gets sent to you for verification and then gets deleted.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're already doing that already.
Yeah, the mechanics of it is at the moment if you come to us for KYC, AML, know your customer anti-money laundering, it's usually me that looks at it actually. One other guy. And we look at it and say, yep, that looks like a driving licence issued by the DVLA. That looks like a utility bill. That address he's given us matches that. That's fine. Okay, so the guy's proved who he is with photo ID, and proved where he is with an address. It's done. All I need to do is mark that customer's KYC approved. The actual ID documents that they have given us, they're deleted immediately. We don't need to keep them. We don't keep them. Nobody can rip them off us. Nobody can.
But you can't anyway because of GDPR. You know, you've got
anyway.
to, because there's loads of GDPR regulations, and if you break any of them, the CEO has to pay 4% of the annual turnover. So, you know, GDPR is huge.
Really vicious.
Well, just this is not Scotcoin. What happens if someone doesn't have a passport or a driving licence with a photo on it? How do they pass the KYC?
Well, they're going to have some form of photo ID.
Yeah,
because
my daughter is in that situation. She doesn't have a passport, she doesn't have a driving licence, and she can't get KYC. So how can they do this with the Scotcoin? It's just a question.
Does she have a bank account?
Yes, yes. They would not accept the birth certificate, would not accept anything else. They wanted a document. She doesn't have one.
How did she open it? How did she open the bank account?
But they wanted a passport or a driving licence.
Yeah, no, I know, but I'm asking you how she opened the.
I don't know.
You don't know. Well, the answer is she must have passed FCA. She must have passed FCA approved. Hang on. She must have passed FCA approved guidelines to get the bank account. She couldn't get it any other way. And exactly the same applies to
if someone comes to Scotcoin project with that situation, how do they KYC?
We will look very, very carefully at the FCA regulations and find out just how we do that.
Just when you mentioned that,
I don't have an immediate
You'll do it the same way your daughter did.
Because she'll have to get verified with you guys. How's she going to do it?
Yeah, the FCA regulations are there's quite a lot of them, and we, for shorthand, we say passport or driving
but
license.
There are a whole lot of different things.
But, yeah.
Passport actually expired and it was rejected.
Yeah.
Some discussions with another cryptocurrency company.
So you must have data you have to keep for the FCA.
Sorry?
You must have data you have to keep for the FCA.
We have to tell them that we have checked the data. But I don't need to keep your passport to prove that I have looked at your passport.
What about people that are spending 50 grand?
Sorry?
What about people that are spending 50 grand at Scotland? Surely you have to show for the tax purposes that.
Well, the point is, you will have a wallet, and we know who owns that wallet. Right. But that's all we need to know. We don't, having done the KYC check, All we need to know is who the wallet is, full stop.
It is possible that there will be enhanced levels of security for people who require to do larger transactions, in the same way that if you go onto Bitrex, you've got to jump through some hoops, but then if you want to trade seriously and do lots of it, you've got to jump through an awful lot more hoops. Now, when we are finally decided on exactly how we're doing the ID, yes, we will probably work something like that into that. But the important part is right now, all we need to do is prove that we have checked. We do not need to keep that information. We do not want to keep that information.
Okay, I think, see, Coinbase, they asked me to sign up and they said they'll accept a picture of me holding my debit card like that as well. So there's different ways you can...
There's different things.
Yeah.
Actually, it's 10 to 9, so time's getting on. I think we'll have just...
That's why the FAQs are really good. We get stuff that we haven't been asked.
I think we'll just have one more question if anyone's got one question. There's one question there, right.
You mentioned the stability of the coin earlier, and you were saying it's quite difficult to sell them as such. And compared to other cryptocurrencies, Scotcoins, it's not as easy to buy and sell. Well, it is in some ways, but not to sell. Or is that how you're planning on keeping stability? Is to keep it more? It's not just a tradable asset that you're going to spike up and down.
Well, the one thing I would say to you is, if we go back to Bitcoin's original situation, the whole idea of Bitcoin was that it would be used as a currency, as an alternative to the money that was in the banks. That dream has died for the simple reason that the currency, the costs of transaction have risen as Bitcoin has gone up and it's become an impossibility. And what has then happened is that Bitcoin has become a store of value. Now, we're very determined that we're not going to just be a store of value. If people want to hold it for a reason, that's fine, that's great. But we're determined that it's going to be used, the transaction costs will be low, and we believe that there will be a reasonable amount of people who are buying and selling to keep the price stable. That's our belief. We can be completely wrong, it's what we believe.
But it all boils down to, we want to provide a method of transferring funds between businesses and customers, and between businesses. It's more efficient, cheaper and faster than we have at the moment. And that in itself, if we can provide that to Scottish SMEs first, that provides a 2% perhaps advantage to our economy, because we make it easier and we basically save paying the banks an awful lot of money. It's a bit more complex than that, but in very broad terms, that's what it is. We want to make our economy better by making it easier and faster to move the funds about.
Okay, thank you all very much indeed for coming. It's much appreciated. Good to come up to Perth and see everybody up here. It's nice to go to a different place. We're always available online. We're always available on telephone, as you probably know, some of you. If you have any questions, anything you want to ask, we're around for a little bit longer. You can come and talk to us. Otherwise, we'll hope to see you again soon. Thank you very much.
Sorry, it's all right.